On today's show, the San Diego Padres get exactly the opposite of the bare minimum of what they needed from Nestor Cortes and suffer a sweep at the hands of the Orioles. Is the season over? Is this team doomed? All that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Thursday, September 4th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for nearly 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but also various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for 2 to any golf tournament in the U.S. with the exception of the Masters. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary, and ends October 31st, 2025, so go check that out. And if you want to check me out, I'm currently on a social media break, but you can check out the YouTube for Locked On Padres if you're not watching on there already. Send any of your questions or comments, and I'd love to answer them, especially on Mondays when I tend to do a whole segment dedicated to mailbag. But throughout the week, I don't know. Again, I'm thinking about dropping the Monday mailbag. I'm thinking about it and just answering questions throughout. That's kind of the vibe as we get down to these very not uneventful last few weeks of baseball, but definitely baseball that doesn't have as many questions. I think it just could be me. As much to talk about? I don't know. But whatever, guys. Let's start off. We're going to talk about yesterday's game. Then I want to talk about just a general thing about stats. Talk a little bit about Luis Arraez and Dylan Cease and what those two players have in common. And then any silver linings we could possibly take away from this team right now. But the Padres lose yesterday's game 7-5. And the first thing we got to talk about is Nestor Cortes. I said it after yesterday's start, after Yu Darvish's very, very inadequate, let's put it, start on Tuesday. Right, in which Darvish only went 4 innings. He gave up 3 runs, did strike out 6 batters, right? He showed some promise at some times. But then Nestor Cortes comes in, and Nestor Cortes, his previous 2 starts have been very weird. Mr. Nestor. Mr. Nasty Nestor is what I've been told he is, right? Where he had a really good start against the Dodgers, right? It's a start that actually started to give, frankly, a lot of us, I think, a lot of faith that maybe we could still pull out of this thing, right? In which he goes 6 innings, doesn't allow a run, only 1 hit. Then in the Minnesota start, he doesn't do as well, and he gets ejected. And then this start, it was somehow worse than I ever could have expected, right? He goes 2 1/3 only, giving up 6 earned runs on 7 hits, and 3 straight home runs. The first one to Colton Cowser, the second to Kobe Mayo, and the last one to Alex Jackson. If you don't know who any of those players are, the only one that you might have heard before is maybe Ryan Mountcastle. He had like a almost 30 home run season once. Kobe Mayo was a top prospect at one point. I think people are still on him. And Alex Jackson has been one of those guys that's not all that very good. So not necessarily guys that you should be giving up absolute bombs to. Even the top prospect in Jackson Holiday, you would oh wait, no. He gave up a home run to him too in the first inning. My apologies. It just wasn't consecutive, right? So Nestor Cortes completely screwing over the Padres pitching for the rest of the game, right? They have to bring in Sean Reynolds as the sacrificial lamb. He goes 2 2/3, giving up only 1 run, so literally better than what Nestor did. Kyle Hart, Jeremiah Shire, Mason Miller, and Robert Suarez all used. And you might be wondering, well, Javi, with an off day, why would our boy Shildt use those guys? Because the Padres did come back in this game a little bit. Manny Machado hit a home run in this game, 2-run in the bottom of 6. Jake Cronenworth had a big single. It was a little bit of like a bloop to a degree. Jake Cronenworth, by the way, has been so good for a while now, and I think it's worth mentioning that like Cronenworth has just been such a good player for what they really needed. I think especially right now for this team that has been falling apart and just not getting consistent play. He had a 905 OPS last month, right, in the month of August. Right, so hopefully he can continue that momentum. Has it so far in 3 games, but I'm really hopeful that Cronenworth is just the definition of solid baseball player. Other than that, though, not too much else. The Padres almost made the comeback, though, in this game. That's why I put too little too late in the video version of the show, in which they have bases loaded at one point. They do get a run after the Jake Cronenworth single, but then Jose Iglesias grounds into a double play, completely killing all the momentum. That was their best chance to really, truly make a comeback, right? I think that you just the bare minimum was just not to hit into a double play there, and it was a a Michelin star chef served double play by Jose Iglesias there, and then ends up being Elias Diaz who strikes out, and that's the thing. That's why you didn't need a double play. Getting back to Arráez would have been really, really big for that team there, but unfortunately they do not. Arráez, by the way, 0 for 4, I believe, in this game. No, 1 for 5. My apologies. In this game, just not great, not great. But if there were some silver linings, it is that, in fairness to Iglesias, look, he's got to play shortstop, right? Like he has to with Xander Bogaerts out. But I will say once again, I am questioning Mike Shildt a little bit. Gavin Sheets brought into pinch hit for Jose Iglesias later on in the game. Should you have used that pinch hit earlier in this situation in the bottom of the 6th inning? Maybe not, because it is the 6th inning. But I will say that I don't understand how Gavin Sheets can possibly be sitting and Luis Arraez starting. Or frankly, let's not even focus on Arraez. Anyone. I don't care who it is. Gavin Sheets has been on an absolute rampage for a while now. And if he's in the lineup the full way through, do they hit for some more power? Do they get some RBIs? I don't know for sure. But what I do know is that Gavin Sheets has been fire for a while now, frankly. And I think that that's really frustrating to see Luis Arraez continue to get the second spot. 1,200 OPS in the month of August for our boy Gavin Sheets. Why is he ever sitting? And why is Luis Arraez, who doesn't play a good first base as much, why is he playing first base? And why is Ryan O'Hearn playing DH? It should be Gavin Sheets DHing, and then it should be Laureano at first, and then I would give Arraez a day off. I would give him another day off, use him more sparingly, move him around the lineup. I don't know why we are so headstrong for a guy that just has not been what he used to be. And what he used to be wasn't like an MVP player. He was a very good, a little bit of an all-star type caliber player. But as we've argued many times on the show, we're going to get into it a little bit later. But we'll have to see. Unfortunately, the Padres don't get the win in this one. Just really bad. And they had some bad moments. Diaz had an errant throw. That wasn't great. Mason Miller, right? Despite all the pain, right? Mason Miller had an immaculate inning in this one. Amazing stuff to watch. Laureano had a great catch. They had good momentum in this game, right? They had good things go their way. And Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr., I love to see home runs from those two guys. Because Machado's been in a slump for a while, and Tatis, while not in a slump per se, because he's still been productive offensively with the walks, reaching on base, all the speed and all that, as we've talked about the show so many times. But he has been slumping when it comes to power. So it was just cool to see those two guys, see one go through the hoop per se when it comes to Manny generally just doing anything on offense, especially after he got robbed in Tuesday's game of potentially an extra base hit. And then Tatis, where we just haven't seen the power basically all year, all that consistently. So it's nice to see that, even if they did get the loss. But man, does this loss really, really sting. But you know what doesn't sting, folks? What doesn't make you feel awful afterwards? It's 5 Hour, guys. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or just making great old memories with your buddies and old pals. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game, whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to power through your day. 5 Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. It's awesome, guys. So golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. This grape ginger lime flavor of 5 Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or having to run around on some Caddyshack nonsense looking like a cartoon chasing down your beverage cart. You know what I mean? You don't have to do that with 5 Hour. They got you covered, guys. So now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf course with the exception of the Masters in the old US of A. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament and ends October 31st of this year. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing, despite it all, into the second segment of the show. As I was saying, there were some silver linings from this game, right? There were silver linings. Number one, that Mason Miller immaculate inning, that was electric. Number two is the Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. home runs. Again, it's just nice to see those two guys get to see one go through the hoop. That's great. And number three is, yes, they just got swept by the Orioles. Something that it fills me with nausea. Is that a word? I don't care. I like it. It's making me nauseous just saying it. I want to vomit just hearing that, right? But remember that, and I must emphasize this, that they still have a little bit of a weak schedule going ahead, right? You've got the Rockies, and also you've got the Reds, who, by the way, are still 6 games back, I believe, of the Padres. It could be 5 now. I don't know if it was updated. I didn't see if the Reds won yesterday. Let me just check that really quickly. All right, so even if the Padres limp into the postseason, they're still probably making the postseason at this rate. The worst thing that could possibly happen, Cincinnati's still 6 games back, by the way. They're 70-70. The Giants actually have just leapfrogged over them at 71-69. So as long as the Padres make the wild card, anything can happen. The worst thing that can happen is if you have a really bad series against the Rockies, which Lord knows they are capable of. Let's be very clear. This is an atrocious Rockies team that I don't even think the Padres' usual curse against the Rockies, right? All these past few years, as bad as the Rockies have been, prior to this season, the Padres were 6 games under 500 against the Rockies, since 2020, right? 3 seasons of just bad play against this Rockies team for whatever reason. But it's still a team that worries you. You're still I don't know. This is the type of team that they'll win 1 series this year, and it could be against us. But it's 4 games against Colorado, and then you've got the Reds coming up. So the worst thing that can happen, it's 3 games against Colorado, then you've got the Reds, then 4 after that. My apologies. I read the schedule wrong. The worst thing that can happen is if you lose the series, and then if you lose to the Reds. That's the nightmare scenario in which the Padres truly just explode. But that's when we start getting, if that happens, by the way, that's when we start getting into really truly DEFCON 1, AJ Preller and Mike Shildt might get fired type of stuff if that were to happen. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Padres can bounce back, but they're not going to be able to bounce back if they can't get anything out of starting pitching. Only 2 1/3 for Nestor Cortes yesterday. I talked about on Wednesday's show how I was excited, or at least hopeful, that they could get something out of JP Sears or any of their back-end guys. Nestor Cortes had a good start. Then he had a S start, but then got ejected. So I was figuring somewhere in between we could get from Nestor Cortes, but we did not. The last time a starter went 6 innings for the Padres was the final game in the Dodgers series, which for those who don't remember, was about a week ago, specifically August 24th. That was the last time a Padres starting pitcher went 6 innings. Furthermore, by the way, and it was Pivetta, of course. Furthermore, no pitcher aside from Pivetta since that game has gone more than 4 1/3. Pivetta went 5. Aside, more than 4 1/3, right? The most that a starter outside Pivetta since that last Dodgers game has gone is 4 1/3, and it was the blowout win against the Twins. Right? So even when the Padres had a blowout win, they weren't getting consistent long innings from their starters, right? So this is a giant problem, and I don't know what's going to break it. I still maintain my belief that if the back end of this rotation is going to figure it out, they've got at least the best possible competition you could ask for. You've got Colorado, you've got Cincy, you've got Colorado again, you've even got a White Sox matchup in there. It's a good time to hopefully see something from this rotation. And we're going to talk about that more tomorrow when we do a preview of the Rockies series with my boy, Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies. He's going to be coming on the show for Fun Friday. But all in all, you're just seeing if you're upset about how the Padres have been, man, don't worry. I understand. I'm right there with you, brother. It has been a really, really rough patch for this team, and it's starting to really feel like what I was feeling like early on in the year. My prediction for this Padres team was that they would be a pretty good team but miss the playoffs. Now, a couple of things happened with that, right? The D-backs were not nearly as good as everybody expected. The 49ers, the Giants flamed out, right? There's just a lot of other teams that started flaming out. The Braves were not nearly as good as they were supposed to be. They had that second highest win total of all, according to FanDuel and all those gambling sites. But I know FanDuel, they were the second highest team in terms of win total. They didn't end up being good. So there were some things that did break the Padres' way. But injuries and this in general, it's officially in play. And I don't want to ring the alarm and get everybody super panicked, but it's officially in play that the Padres might have made the worst trade of AJ Preller's tenure. And that's the Freddie Fermin trade. If you look at it this way, there's 2 ways to look at this. Number one, you look at it as, hey man, we needed a catcher. We had the worst catching duo in the entire sport. That's not how you win a World Series. That's not how you go far. You need something there. Agreed. But the other way to look at it is that they gave up 2 viable starting pitchers for a backup catcher. That's the fear. And it is looking real right now. I've already talked about it. Ryan Berger has not gone and done worse than at least 5 innings and 2 earned runs. That would be amazing for this Padres team right now. And Stephen Kolek, in his first start for the Royals, went 6 innings and only gave up 1 run. So this is becoming a problem. And I'm hopeful that Ruben Niebla, under his tutelage, under the in general good streak of positive developments from the Padres when it comes to their pitching staff, whether it be pitching staff or bullpen staff. Hey, David Morgan, remember, there's a lot of guys on this team that just appeared. My fear is that some of those guys that appeared that they were able to get a lot of value out of, that they assumed too much that they were going to be able to get that out of Sears and Nestor Cortes, and they didn't think it through. And instead, Kolek, like maybe a Kolek and Bergert, maybe they really were just like pretty decent. Bergert's fastball plays at the major league level, at least just for now. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But I've got some other points I want to bring up. I've been going back and forth with some of you in the comments on the YouTube and occasionally on Twitter, which I'm now inactive on at the moment. But I've been going back and forth with you guys about Luis Arraez for what feels like an eternity now. And one person, at Kevy2x313, kind of asked in bad faith, I mentioned this on a mailbag a couple weeks ago, that, and I'm going to use his comment as a springboard, by the way, don't worry. That he mentioned, he's like, you don't know ball, you don't know this, I'm paraphrasing, you don't know baseball, you need to upload video footage of you actually having played, or else you don't deserve the right to be able to talk about baseball, which is a common critique that I think a lot of journalists get in the industry, that you can't possibly know anything, your opinion's useless unless you played, right? But one issue that I took with him was that I asked, okay, which part did you disagree with from this one commenter? And then he said, just with Luis Arraez, like he's a catalyst for offense. And I said, well, what specific thing? And he didn't really name anything specifically, right? And he said, this is a comment from him now, the latest. He said, the reason being a catalyst is vague is because you're not seasoned. But yes, man, whatever the stats tell you is the answer, I'm sure you can justify, just as people who appreciate him for his proven track record. Batting average, bat control is a huge part of the game still, or we wouldn't track it. Also, he's a nightmare for pitchers to strike out, or does strikeouts not matter anymore either? Stop trying to reinvent the wheel, dude. He's a stud and you're hating on him. Again, he's not a stud. And I am hating on him. I admit I've been hating. I'm a little bit too much. And I even apologize to my guy Kevy. Maybe I was a little bit too mean in some of my responses. But here's what the comparison that I think I want to throw out for you guys, which is, let's look at Dylan Cease and Luis Arraez. The lack of strikeouts for Luis Arraez, the way I view it is this. It is an incredible talent. But sometimes an incredible talent isn't always conducive to winning. I brought up Russell Westbrook a few weeks back on this episode where he averaged a triple-double for a season. It's one of those things that's more of an amazing accomplishment than an amazing skill because of everything else. I think the problem with Arraez is too many people only look at the batting average, right? That's it. They look at the batting average, they say that's it. As if other major league teams and all the teams around the league that have traded this guy, all the projections that say he's not going to get paid that much, those teams are just so wrong because they don't know how to read the simple stat of batting average. But here's what I think is the issue. I think the issue is, right now in the sport, with this particular player, people are ignoring that if you're good at one thing, but you're bad at the rest, that will make you a bad player. So it's not striking out. It does matter. It's an incredible ability. It's why he's still in Major League Baseball and why he can be a starting, caliber player on a contending team. But it also has a defect to it, and that's the rest of his game, which we're going to talk about in a second, and I'll explain my Dylan Cease comparison. I promise I'm going to land this plane. It sounds crazy comparing a pitcher and a batter, but I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But first, let me talk to you guys about our good friends over at The Time of Games. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing like catching a baseball game live, the energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person. But actually getting the tickets, it can be kind of tough. You know what I mean? The queues, login screens, the surprise fees, taking all the fun out of it. And that's why I, ladies and gentlemen, and you too, soon, should use the app known as Game Time. It gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price isn't going to magically, jump by $40. I'm exaggerating, but you guys get my point. Isn't that annoying? I hate it. Well, Game Time, they've got you covered for that. Know your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. I love the zone deals. You just pick a section. They pick the seats for you. You get a discount. Prices go down closer to the game. It's great. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Download Game Time today. And just like that, everybody, we are back here at the Locked On Padres podcast. I'm coming to you all with open arms to explain what I mean by there being that the traditional stat of at batting average, that just because you're good at that one thing does not mean you're an overall good player. For example, what if I told you guys, you're all dumb? Dylan Cease has been a stud this year. Whoa, Javi, what are you talking about? He's given up too many home runs. He has a really high walk rate. He gets hit hard. He doesn't go a lot of innings. He doesn't have the most diverse pitching repertoire. What are you talking about? He's been bad this year. Well, I would respond to that and just tell you, but he's fourth in Major League Baseball in strikeout rate. He's fourth. You know what I mean? He's fourth in strikeout rate. That has to mean that he's great. Strikeouts is a classic stat that we've been using since the very beginning of baseball. Right? And it's usually a great indicator of like who's great. Strikeouts are awesome. And in total strikeouts, he's fifth. So what are you talking about? He must be great. Exactly. Because there are other things to his game. Number one, that he walks too many batters, right? We've talked about this before on the show, but in terms of his walk rate, he has the fourth highest walk rate in Major League Baseball. Right? So yes, he's got a lot of strikeouts, and we've seen guys get away with this, by the way. Blake Snell being one of them. Blake Snell had like a super high walk rate, but a super high strikeout rate, but managed to make it count because he always stranded runners and all that stuff. So if you want to get more advanced and technical about it, that's one reason that stat nerds will be optimistic that Cease can bounce back in the future. Not this year, but in the future. Because usually pitchers, if they're showing this much strikeout stuff, they usually should be able to retire and not give up runs every single time they get on base. That's a little bit complicated, but we'll leave it at that. So that's what I would tell everybody for this. The equivalent for Dylan Cease being bad with the walk rate, being bad with the home runs, and being bad with not going innings, Arráez, it's the fact that he doesn't walk, the fact that he doesn't have speed, and the fact that he doesn't have defense. And even more so, you might say, well, he fights off pitches. That is true. And I do like that there are times, especially when the game slows down, potentially in a high-stakes game, that a batter like Luis Arraez does have the ability sometimes to be like, dang, even if we throw our best fireballer at this guy, he's still going to at least make contact, and that can be scary. Right? Especially when he's playing well, especially when he's on a hot streak. So there is value there. But I will tell everybody that says he can really prolong everything. Arráez, in terms of pitches per plate appearance, Luis Arraez ranks 123rd among all position players in Major League Baseball. And fun fact, the guy that a lot of people won't think is as good, Jake Cronenworth, he ranks 9th. Jake Cronenworth sees a lot of pitches. He makes pitchers work. And apparently really good at drawing hit by pitches, by the way. I don't know if you guys do. Jake Cronenworth, by far, the most hit player in Padres history. He has 62 HBPs, hit by pitches, and the second highest is Chase Headley with 38. Just a fun fact. That's just, like, ridiculous. And it really, like, my eyeballs jumped out of my head when I saw that, right? But that's my thing overall. I hope you guys understand the comparison I'm making here. I'm really coming as in best faith as possible. And I do believe that a lot of people, for the most part, with the exception of a small vocal minority, agree that Luis Arraez just isn't as good as I think some of his, what's it called? Endorsers, I guess is the word. I can't think of another one right now, would like you to believe. The next thing I want to talk about is a question/response to my Yu Darvish episode yesterday from Tony Sue, who says, don't necessarily agree on the Darvish contract, to which I said it might have been a bad contract. He says, you have to consider that for at least a few years, Darvish was the undisputed ace of the staff, and that's good. I'd say he was ace in name, but not necessarily in what he actually did, but I'll allow it. I just think that Blake Snell and Joe Musgrove, I believe, were considered better pitchers. But Darvish was always the game one starter. Does that make sense? They like to lead off with Darvish, but I don't know if that necessarily means that he was the best overall pitcher. I think there were times and periods, especially with Snell's Cy Young season, that he was better. But point still stands. Right? He says, I don't know that the last few years, including next year, Darvish was expected at the time the contract was signed to continue to lead the staff, but was expected to have value holding up the bottom half of the staff at worst. Last year, no one really knows what personal problems or other prevented Darvish from playing most of the season, but if I remember correctly, because it was labeled a personal leave, the club didn't have to pay him the time he was away. Currently, he's working himself back from what is mostly a year-and-a-half absence, and in my opinion, he's looking just fine. Flashes of ace potential, and as a veteran, doing his best not to implode when he's not his best. I would disagree with ace potential, but I do think he's flashed valuable number 3 starter potential. So I slightly disagree there. But anyway, I remember when he signed his extension, I noted in the time Darvish was not your typical ace starter. Did you really, man? We have to check the records for your comments, my man. But, well, my opinion hasn't changed, and see, he still isn't. The ace is usually a flamethrower who powers through the opponent batters. Darvish, even today, could probably throw a fastball well over 96 if it had no movement, but instead changes speeds and converts that latent velocity into spin. I agree. I don't see that Darvish has lost any of the physical tools that would be required to return to form, so he's not on my given up list. He signed a below-market contract with the Padres in exchange for more years, and in my opinion, signs are that if he doesn't suffer an injury and wants to pitch, has the ability to fulfill his entire contract to 2028. Totally respect the opinion, man. For me, the thing I wanted to talk about on the Darvish episode yesterday isn't so much that they kept him, but for how much they kept him. I really do think that if you wait until the end of 2023, in which he posts a 4.5 ERA, he has some injury luck, he is 36 years old, I don't think teams are like, dude, we're giving you 6 years, 100. I think it's more like a 4-year deal, and stuff like that matters. Because then all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, wow, we only have to worry about this guy for 1 more year, and we'll just have extra space. We'll have extra money to be able to allocate through the rest of the payroll. So that could help. But I also noted on yesterday's episode that it is possible that the Padres did that contract, which is there's a cult of people who believe sometimes that Eric Hosmer, the contract was overall good for the Padres because it showed they were a serious team and it brought in Manny Machado. That's totally possible that the same thing happened with Darvish. That this team, basically prior to 2015, and with the exception of a couple years in 84, 83, and the late 90s with the 98 team that made the World Series, right, has been extraordinarily irrelevant in the grand scheme and history of baseball. So maybe Preller was like, I just need to start making us a destination. So even if that means extending guys that I don't want to extend, even if that means giving players more money than maybe I think they're worth, I want to start doing that. That way it maybe helps us down the line to build an organizational culture that is more favorable to players, which will give you more players wanting to come there, more players at least answering your call for free agents, giving you more sources, all sorts of behind the scenes things that I do think could help. So I think that is a case in favor of Darvish, but overall I still maintain my belief that you can find guys that give you Darvish-like quality without the investment. I mean, look at Nick Pivetta. Right, Nick Pivetta they got for like nothing by comparison. He's a much better pitcher right now at this stage in this juncture than Yu Darvish. So that's just my opinion on the matter, but I totally respect that. Like, I'm not fully giving up on the guy either. I'm not. And again, we have some lower tier opponents. I'm just saying it is something that you look back at, and it is a little bit of a microcosm of what is sometimes the AJ Preller issue, which is looking at everything right now, living a little bit too much in the present, and not always saying, you know what, let's leave it a little bit open, let's have some flexibility, and then we'll see what happens. The Juan Soto trade is a good example. Did they need to do that trade? No. Is it fun, and did it make them more of a story? Is it going to continue helping their attendance and all that? The fact that they are going to always do trades and always go for it? Of course. But also, you know what might be really helping right now? You already had Tatis and Machado. You had Jackson Merrill. He ends up becoming a star. What if you had Wood and Abrams instead of, right? Instead of Xander Bogaerts and any number of other prospects you had to give up. Right? Maybe that's a better thing. Maybe you get to trade those prospects for something else that the team ended up needing more. I don't know. That's all in the past. I'm just saying that's my opinion on the matter, but I sure as well hope that Yu Darvish can be something. At least give them some value towards the end, because God knows they need it. And as another commenter mentioned on yesterday's episode, the Padres' best starter is unfortunately in Kansas City right now, which you might not be wrong about with the exception of Nick Pivetta. But folks, stay tuned for tomorrow's episode, as I'm going to be talking with my boy Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies, previewing the series, talking about general baseball vibes and whatnot. It'll be a fun episode. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.